I'm Anna,
I'm Jessica.
and this is the Paranoia Pair.
Hello. It's just me. Womp womp. Insert the hey, how y'all doing sound. Jessica cannot join us today. Her child is in the terror toddler stage, where it is literally the embodiment of the baby from the Addams Family, Pubert. So, unfortunately, you'll be stuck with me, the lame one. She'll be joining whenever she's able to. She told me to go ahead and do some solo episodes in the meantime. It's more awkward recording this by myself than it is when I have another person here. So now I'm just a crazy person with a microphone instead of it being two crazy people with a microphone. But on to today's topic. Eric, this is for you. I'm going to be covering UAPs, which stands for Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. It's the government given name for what normal people like you and me would call UFOs. It used to be unidentified aerial phenomena until December of 2022. It was changed due to the Pentagon including submerged and transmedium objects. And in case you were wondering what transmedium objects meant, like I was, it just means objects that can somehow transition between space and the atmosphere, or the atmosphere and bodies of water. And this kind of behavior actually was observed by a group of Navy pilots when they seen a UAP hovering above the ocean. And then it looked as if it lowered itself into the water. So in simpler terms, they wanted to include objects from the air, sea, and space. In the United States, UFOs gained a major spotlight in the late 1940s and 50s, and this prompted the US government to launch various projects and panels to investigate these sightings. Hundreds of military and commercial pilots have also reported UAP encounters, and according to the FBI website, the Air Force was actually the main investigator, but the reports were filed with the FBI and they often investigated together. The Air Force was actually formed in 1947, and in just that first year, they had 147 UFO reports. On December 30th, 1947, they began a project to study the phenomena. This actually would become a series of projects, and the sole purpose was to investigate UFOs. Their titles were Project Sign, Project Grusch, and Project Blue Book. They were the very first of their kind. Project Blue Book would be the longest running of the three, but I won't really be going into much detail on these because there's probably going to be future episodes exploring them. So the Air Force began to get a lot of criticism in the 1960s, and they didn't really want to continue its studies, but ending its studies would also bring on additional cover-up charges. The topic of UFOs had really become controversial, so controversial that other government agencies weren't willing to take on the UFO studies. So the Air Force began looking for universities to take this topic on, and the University of Colorado agreed to take on the UFO studies on October 6th, 1966. And a man named Edward Condon, he was a physicist. He would be the director. Robert J. Lowe, who was an assistant dean of the university's graduate program, would be the coordinator. And then Dr. David R. Saunders, professor of psychology at the University of Colorado, and astronomer Franklin E. Roach would serve as the co-principal investigators. So the work this committee did was a book that was titled Scientific Study of Unidentified Flying Objects, and it's also known as the Condon Report. The committee produced a final report that said the study of UFOs was unlikely to yield any major scientific discoveries, and they also recommended that no further research should be done on the topic. And this was met with quite a bit of backlash. Dr. Saunders, who was part of the committee in the beginning, later got kicked off for disagreeing with the popular opinions of the group. And he was one of the people against it. And he wrote his own book called UFOs. Yes, where the Condon Committee went wrong. His book was almost completely ignored, though, but in it he detailed the reasons why Condon and Lowe ignored what he considered legitimate UFO cases. And he also talked about how their conclusion was made in advance and was biased. He also detailed why other scientists on the project determined that UFOs are likely to be vehicles from outer space, and because of that, they were either fired or their opinions were completely ignored altogether. So in response to the Condon report, the US stopped spending resources on analyzing UFO reports. They said nothing has come from the study of UFOs in the past 21 years that has added to scientific knowledge, and further extensive study of UFOs probably cannot be justified. This, of course, is until 2017, when it was reported that the Pentagon had a secret program called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, and they were investigating UFOs. It was also revealed that the government spent $22 million over the past 10 years. You're probably thinking, the past 10 years? Yes, and that's because the program was developed in 2007. The purpose was to investigate aerial threats, including what the military preferred to call UAPs. It's claimed that this program ended in 2012, but that doesn't mean that a new program didn't take its place, and that is kind of what's happened this entire time. There have been multiple projects that have just taken the place of others. In December of 2017, the Department of Defense confirmed the existence of a program collecting data on military UFO sightings. This program was called the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. It was managed by the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence with the help of the Office of Naval Intelligence. Now, notice how I said was, and that's because it was renamed and expanded to the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO for short, in 2022. The AARO now serves as the focal point for all UAP-related activities within the Department of Defense. And the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force was mentioned in June of 2020 during a hearing of the United States Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. On April 12th, 2021, the Pentagon confirmed the authenticity of pictures and videos gathered by the task force, including pyramid-shaped objects hovering above the USS Russell in 2019 that was off the coast of California. There was another video shown that was recorded in July of 2019 in the Combat Information Center of the USS Omaha, and it shows a spherical object flying over the ocean through an infrared camera at night, moving across the screen before stopping and going down into the water. So now, if you're like me or Jessica, you're probably wondering what a combat information center is, and it's essentially just a room on a warship that collects communications and data received over multiple channels. And then it's all organized and evaluated, including drone information and radio communications. It was confirmed that the photos and videos were taken by U.S. Navy personnel, and the UAP task force has included these incidents in their ongoing examinations. There's multiple arguments about the cause of these pyramid-shaped flying objects. Science writer Mick West has argued that the pyramid images in the video were most likely an airplane, Jupiter, and the stars that were distorted when the lens was out of focus. Mr. West also said that the Navy's video is an example of an effect called bokeh. And he also demonstrated this theory by recreating similar pyramid images on video. For those of you who weren't a teenage girl in peak Tumblr era, the bokeh effect is kind of like it's a blur produced in out of focus parts of an image. It creates kind of a sparkle effect of blurred light. It was all the rage in like 2010. Mr. West's arguments can't be applied to all of the videos and photos though. In a video that was taken in January of 2014, a pilot got footage of what at first he thought was a drone. In the video, he says there was a whole fleet of them and they were all flying against the wind. The wind was 120 knots, but don't worry, I've already converted it. 120 knots is equivalent to 138 miles per hour, which is 222 kilometers per hour for all of the normal people who use the metric system. The object then, however, starts to rotate, and the pilot seems completely baffled and surprised by this. This was captured through infrared. U.S. Navy pilots and other American military forces have actually reported more than 650 instances of flying objects moving in ways that defy conventional aeronautical physics. On June 25th, 2021, the Director of National Intelligence released a report on UAPs that's also known as the Pentagon UFO Report. The report revealed that the UAP task force was unable to identify 143 of 144 objects spotted between 2004 and 2021. They were only able to identify one. That's wonderful. Hey, I mean, at least they tried, right? The report also said that 18 featured unusual movement patterns and flight characteristics. They needed more analysis to determine if those sightings represented breakthrough technology. Some of those steps were resource intensive and would require even more funding. A later version of the report released in 2023 says that a large number of these reportings were likely weather balloons, drones, or debris. There were still sightings that had no explanations though. To quote an official about the report, "We have no clear indications that there are any non-terrestrial explanation for them, but we will go wherever the data takes us." Then came David Grusch. So some background on David is he's a former Air Force major and intelligence official. He worked in the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and the National Reconnaissance Office. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency is a combat support agency within the United States Department of Defense, and their primary mission is collecting, analyzing, and distributing geospatial intelligence in support of national security. They provide detailed imagery and mapping services that are crucial for military operations, disaster responses, and security planning. He served as the representative of the NRO to the UAP task force. David Grusch also assisted in drafting the National Defense Authorization Act of 2023 before the congressional hearings. His involvement in drafting the NDAA included provisions for reporting UFOs and whistleblower protections. David Grusch spilled the beans to the debrief on June 5th, 2023 about what he claims is a UFO cover-up by the government. Are we still saying spill the beans? I am a millennial, so I honestly have no clue. According to him, the US government worked with private aerospace companies and has top secret programs focused on recovering and reverse engineering alien spacecraft and their pilots. He even says people have been threatened and some have died to keep these projects under wraps. To verify David's claims, the reporter interviewed Carl Nell, and he's a retired Army colonel who was also on the UAP task force, and a man who is going by Jonathan Gray. It's a pseudonym to kind of protect his identity, but he is a current U.S. intelligence official at the National Air and Space Intelligence Center. Both Nell and Gray supported Grusch's claims about a secret UFO retrieval and reverse engineering program. David also gave an interview to News Nation. In this interview, he said that the U.S. government has multiple spacecrafts from other species that have either landed or crashed. And he says that the U.S. government is on a disinformation train trying to sway United States citizens from looking into and believing in UAPs and extraterrestrial life. At first, David didn't believe what he was seeing and hearing, but then he had multiple colleagues confide in him. Some of them told him that they were part of a secret program that he had never heard of. They provided him documents that led him to believe that there was a higher program that he didn't have access to. He mentioned that this program had been ongoing for decades and involves recovering crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft and studying their technology and biological materials along with its occupants. The purpose of the program is to understand and potentially harness advanced technologies and knowledge from these alien spacecrafts for national security and technological advancement. And David likes to refer to these as non-human intelligence rather than alien or extraterrestrial. Traditional alien or extraterrestrial beings are typically thought to come from other planets or galaxies outside of Earth, and they may possess advanced technology, supernatural powers, or abilities beyond human comprehension, whereas the term non-human intelligence is a wider range of entities, not just extraterrestrial beings. So this term is more diverse. He believes that these might actually be coming from other dimensions as described by quantum mechanics. This is kind of actually interesting. This is a common theory known as interdimensional hypothesis, and this basically suggests that UFO sightings are actually encounters with objects or beings from parallel dimensions that coexist alongside our own. It's like watching a movie and then the main character could be in two scenes at once, or like walking through a wall to get to the other side. It's also suggested that UFOs could be made of plasma, and that's a state of matter where atoms are ionized and free electrons move around. And this would make the plasma electrically conductive and highly responsive to electromagnetic fields. Plasma could act as a portal or a bridge to a higher dimension realms. Plasma is actually the most abundant form of matter in the universe. It actually makes up about 99% of it. Our stars, including the sun, are all made of plasma, and we can actually observe plasma in lightning, neon signs, and plasma TVs. See, that one kind of surprised me, but like also it's in the name. Plasma TVs. This would explain UAP's appearance of glowing or pulsating objects in the sky, and since plasma is so highly responsive to electromagnetic fields, it's possible that they are influenced by Earth's own magnetic field or other electromagnetic phenomena we have. This could also explain why so many UAP sightings are near areas that are having thunderstorms or areas that have stronger electromagnetic activity. David hasn't actually specifically came into contact with a non-human intelligence himself, but his friends in the program have, and he's convinced it's real. He started asking other people who didn't know each other questions to debunk the idea that this program either didn't exist or was being used as a cover-up for another secret program. When David started to look into these kinds of programs, though, his access was denied. Not only that, but he had started being retaliated against from higher ups. In turn, he filed these actions to the Intelligence Committee's Inspector General. Because of these actions taken against him, he decided to file a whistleblower report and go public. He believes that all of the data points to us not being alone in this universe and the documents that he has seen proving that we are in possession of spacecraft are still classified and he isn't able to disclose them publicly. When he was asked how he knew these spacecrafts were exotic, he said that based on the specific isotopic levels, along with heavy atomic metals that was high on the periodic table, along with a strange mix of elements. He says that these materials are very sophisticatedly engineered, and he believes that they're not made by humans. David also said that back in 1933, Mussolini's government supposedly found an alien spacecraft, and it's actually documented that they have recovered multiple UAPs during this time. These documents also include drawings they made of UAPs. Fast forward to 1944 or 1945, and the US reportedly got their hands on it with a little help from the Vatican and the Five Eyes Alliance.
So let's start from the very beginning. You say it's a 90-year cover-up.
Just about, yeah.
90 years?
1933 was the first recovery in Europe, in Magenta, Italy. They recovered a partially intact vehicle.
It's true, it's real.
Yeah, that actually happened. Italian government moved it to a secure air base in Italy for the rest of kind of the fascist regime until 1944, 1945, and the Pope Pius XII back-channeled that.
So the Vatican was involved?
Yeah, and told the Americans what the Italians had, and we ended up scooping it.
So let me be very clear about this. You're saying that the Catholic Church, the Vatican, they know about the existence of non-human intelligence on this planet.
Certainly.
But NASA and the Department of Defense have shut down these claims, insisting that there are no such programs and they haven't found any extraterrestrial life yet. There was actually an event that happened in 1967 that David mentions in this interview. There was a UAP event that tampered with nuclear missiles at Maelstrom Air Base in Montana. This is accounted by multiple Air Force pilots who have also came forward about this. The UAP was hovering above one of the nuclear silos, and it was described as having a red glow. The missiles experienced simultaneous malfunctions and shut down, and they were actually inoperable for a period of time. The incident was investigated by the Air Force, but no definitive explanation was provided. And this kind of phenomena was studied by Robert L. Hastings. He's a well-known UFO researcher who has extensively documented encounters between UFOs and nuclear weapon sites. He details numerous incidents where UFOs were observed near or interacting with nuclear facilities, and he interviewed over 150 military veterans. These witnesses describe UFOs hovering over missile silos and causing malfunctions or other unusual occurrences. So, in his News Nation interview, the man interviewing David, Ross Holthart, says that he has heard of U.S. aircrafts having to act defensively against UAPs, and asked David if he can confirm or deny these claims. David confirms that there have been instances, and he was briefed by a few individuals on the secret program that there were events that involved humans being hurt or killed by UAPs. David also says that the United States is not the only country who has came into contact with UAPs and their technology. David then brings up an agreement from around 1971 between the US and the USSR to reduce the risk of nuclear war. Article 3 of that agreement acknowledges that the existence of UAPs near nuclear sites and interfering with communications has been used to notify each other if there have been any concerning events with UAPs. David actually waited 4 years to file his whistleblower complaint. He came to this decision after some of the subjects provided him with intelligence, including documents and photographs to evaluate. These people also described in very specific detail how this all worked, and that they were telling him the same exact details, and it all checked out. In July of 2023, there was actually a congressional hearing concerning the topic of UFOs and UAPs. The hearing was a day long, and there were multiple witnesses. One of those witnesses in that hearing was David Grusch. And David said that retaliation was taken against him both professionally and personally due to his whistleblower report. He has had overwhelming support from his former colleagues despite this, though, and he's also aware of planned acts of retaliations against him and his former colleagues from senior leadership of these agencies he worked at.
They ruined one of my boss's careers in another agency. They walked him out of the building and revoked his clearance and terminated him as a show of force after they were going after me. And I feel sorry for that certain individual. And they came after coworkers of mine. I can't get into who, what, when, where, and why to protect their identities and their own process. But so that's what happened to me professionally. And then what happened to me personally was very disturbing. So I have to be very vague about this because ongoing investigation, but I think you'll understand what I'm saying, is they showed my wife and I they can touch me at any time, 2 times. And it was very disturbing. It was in conjunction with some other people getting a message like that are, let's say, publicly well known, some that aren't publicly well known. And of course, I immediately reported that to, counterintelligence, federal law enforcement local to me, because it, wasn't criminal, but it was like a fuck you to me. Like,
David says that in an effort to keep these programs secret, the government is diverting funds meant for another program, and that the U.S. corporations are overcharging the government, and those funds are being sent to these secret programs from IRAD, which is the Independent Research and Development, and projects initiated by companies often with a potential interest to the Department of Defense. Projects are funded through overhead cost rates and are meant to encourage innovation and technological advancement. He has seen satellite footage from his time in the NGA of UAPs and unfortunately was unable to openly discuss the relation of this satellite footage with UAP crash sites. When asked if he believed the government had collected evidence of a UAP crash landing and if he did when he thought the first event had occurred, he stated in the 30s. During the hearing, Representative Nancy Mace asked David about the biological materials found at UAP crash sites, if the biologics were human or non-human, which led to David's response that they were non-human. David mentioned that the UAP task force was refused access to a broad crash retrieval program, indicating that there are significant barriers to accessing information about these incidents. But because he had been put into multiple programs due to his high security clearance, this allowed him to have access to some of the most sensitive information. He claimed to know of multiple colleagues who were injured by UAP activities as well. The response from lawmakers, including the hearing, was serious concern and curiosity. Members of Congress expressed a strong desire to investigate David's claims even further.
At one point, you had said that there has been harmful activity or aggressive activity. Has any of the activity been hostile in your reports?
I know of multiple colleagues of mine that got physically injured. And the activity...
By UAPs or by people within the federal government?
Both.
Okay, so there has been activity by alien or non-human technology and or beings that has caused harm to humans.
I can't get into the specifics in an open environment.
So the AARO office actually has a website, and based on their website, they have a synopsis of metallic specimen, and that specimen was recovered in 1947 from a UAP crash site. The physiochemical properties of this sample claim to be capable of what's scientifically called inertial mass reduction, which basically means levitate or like an anti-gravity function. And this is made possible by the materials bismuth and magnesium layers acting as a terahertz waveguide. And this actually does in a way support the interdimensional hypothesis when they talk about the UAPs being made of some kind of metal that interacts with the magnetic fields. The report also says that with further analysis, the sample does not meet the requirements to function as a terahertz waveguide, but if this sample actually was recovered around 1947, it's possible that it's been exposed to environmental factors or improper storage conditions, and that these properties have changed over time, and degrade. Not to mention the mechanical stress done to the sample in the process of the analyzation over, all of these years could affect the integrity. But in 2023, NASA conducted an independent study on UAPs. The study aimed to examine UAPs from a scientific perspective, focusing on observations of events in the sky that cannot be identified as aircraft or other known natural phenomena. And NASA commissioned an independent study team, which included experts from various fields of astronomy, physics, and aerospace engineering. And they published a final report with several recommendations on how NASA could contribute to understanding UAPs. The UAP topic is pretty fascinating, especially with the recent shift of how the government and military institutions acknowledge them. Historically, UFOs were dismissed as conspiracy theories, but now we have official reports. We have congressional hearings. It's not unlike the government to cover something up that they don't want leaked. And what makes the topic even more compelling is the Pentagon's shifting stance on whether or not UAPs actually exist, and reports that continue to come from credible sources like military pilots. There also was a video that I seen on TikTok released from a UFO hearing in Congress about a month ago, around September 10th. This UAP flying over the water off the coast of Yemen, and then they shoot Hellfire missiles at it, and it looks like the missiles bounce off of this thing, and then it just continues to fly. It does look like it kind of rotates a bit, but it's still moving. So I'm going to play some audio from this hearing.
Mr. Knapp, have you heard about, events like this occurring? And what information might you have?
I have heard about events like this. I have heard about this event. Jeremy Corbell and I talked about it in one of our episodes a while back. We did not have the video, though. There are servers where there's a whole bank of these kind of videos that Congress has not been allowed to see, that the public hasn't been allowed to see. Occasionally, some of that stuff gets out in the wild, and it comes our way. It should be going to you. The public should be seeing this stuff. And why you're not allowed to, I don't know. But that's a Hellfire missile smacking into that UFO and just bounced right off. And it kept going.
It kept going, and it looks like the debris was taken with it.
Yeah, what the hell is that?
That's all I have. Eric, I am so sorry it took this amount of time, but I just felt like I didn't do it justice. And it was kind of frustrating me. I just kind of sucked it up, and it's here. Ta-da! And if I did do terrible, please don't tell me, because it will hurt my feelings. Yeah, that's all I have, guys. I hope you had fun.
Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook at Paranoia Pair Pod. And we will see you next Friday.
Stay spooky.